We are living in a moment unlike any before. The earth groans, nations rise and fall, and ancient prophecies long held in scrolls and scripture are now stirring in real time. Somewhere between mystery and manifestation, the divine clock is ticking, and Jerusalem, the eternal city, once again stands at the center of the storm. In the shadows of kingdoms and the chaos of governments, a gate, sealed in stone for over 1,000 years, is beginning to whisper, not with sound but with movement. The eastern gate of Jerusalem, the Golden Gate, long dormant, is not merely a wall of limestone. It is a gate to prophecy. For centuries men thought it was closed forever. Kings sealed it, sultans buried it. But prophecy never sleeps. It waits, silent and unstoppable. That gate, directly facing the Mount of Olives, is where the glory of the Lord once entered, and it is where the King of glory shall return. If that gate is beginning to stir, then we must awaken. Because what moves in Jerusalem moves the heavens, and what shakes in that ancient city shakes the world. The watchers see it, the builders sense it, the nations ignore it, but those with ears to hear know the time is near. The temple once stood there, twice torn down by the empires of man. But the third temple, the prophesied dwelling place in the last days, is drawing near, and its stirrings are echoing through stones and seasons. This is not religious theater or speculation. It is prophetic convergence. The gate was never just a structure. It was a sign, and now even the dust and soil around it tremble. This movement is not natural, it is supernatural. The eastern gate is more than a wall. It is a doorway between the now and the eternal. As it begins to shift, so must we. The question is not whether prophecy is unfolding. It is whether we will be found awake or asleep, prepared or passive, watching or wandering. This moment is urgent. The signs are not subtle. The veil is thinning. What was written is now being witnessed. And in the heart of Jerusalem, what has been sealed for centuries may soon open, not by the hands of men, but by the purposes of God. So we come to a mystery, to a warning, and to a revelation. The ancient gate is moving. The third temple is rising. And time is no longer waiting. The eastern gate, sealed for centuries, is showing signs of prophetic motion. This gate, also known as the Golden Gate, is not just another entryway into Jerusalem. It is the only gate on the eastern wall of the Temple Mount and stands directly opposite the Mount of Olives. According to Jewish tradition, it is the gate through which the divine presence departed, and the same gate through which the Messiah will return. This ancient structure, buried and blocked for nearly 1,000 years, holds within its stones the echo of promises made by prophets, the footprints of priests, and the shadows of glory. And now it stirs. For centuries, rulers tried to silence the prophecy it carried. The Ottoman Sultan Suleiman sealed it shut in the 16th century, placing graves before it, believing that no Jewish Messiah would defile himself by stepping across them. But prophecy is not hindered by stone, by walls, or by tombs. What man seals in fear, God reserves for fulfillment. And in this hour, those ancient stones are beginning to speak again. Shifts in the ground, unusual activity near the gate, reports of movement, structural tension, and surveillance anomalies. These are not random. They are echoes of something larger. Prophetic motion is not always loud. It often begins in the subtle. A trembling here, a crack there, a tension in the air, and an unease among those who sense the spiritual realm. In the scriptures, the eastern gate is the place where the glory of God entered and exited the temple. The prophet Ezekiel saw it. He witnessed the glory departing from the threshold of the house, and settling above the mountain east of the city. But he also saw it return. The vision of the glory coming back through the same eastern gate was not a poetic image. It was a divine appointment set in stone, waiting for its hour. And now we draw close to that hour. The sealed gate has remained silent for generations, but now it seems to breathe. Its silence feels pregnant with purpose. Every tremor in the earth near that wall resonates with the heartbeat of prophecy. Is the earth preparing itself for the arrival of the King? Is the gate being readied not by human hands, but by divine will? We must remember that no gate remains sealed if God ordains it to open. The stones may resist, but heaven prevails. The eastern gate has become a marker, a countdown, a prophetic threshold. As it begins to shift, we too must shift. The call is not only to watch, but to ready ourselves. For if the gate is moving, then the one who will pass through it is not far off. And when he does, history will be split, nations will bow, and time itself will yield. The eastern gate is moving, not just in stone, but in destiny. The moment draws near. Let those who understand the signs prepare. The gate is waking. The King is coming. The alignment of political, spiritual, and physical forces is accelerating toward temple restoration. What once seemed like a distant vision, a dream preserved only in sacred texts and rabbinical yearnings, is now coming into focus. It is no longer hidden in whispers or buried in speculation. Events are unfolding, powers are shifting, and threads long separated by time, geography, and human will are being drawn together by the invisible hand of providence. The restoration of the temple is no longer just an idea. It is becoming a reality born out of convergence. Politically, the landscape of the Middle East is transforming in ways once thought impossible. Alliances are being made between ancient enemies. Israel, long isolated in a region of hostility, now finds itself courted by former foes. Embassies are opening in Jerusalem. Conversations that once took place only in secret are now openly declared. Laws are changing. Territorial discussions are surfacing around the Temple Mount. These are not coincidences. They are strategic movements orchestrated in the unseen realm, where kings are as rivers in the hands of the Lord. And the heart of the matter, whether acknowledged or denied, is Jerusalem, its destiny, its temple, and its king. Spiritually, a stirring is taking place that transcends denominations and doctrines. The Jewish people are returning not only to their land, but to their longing. The desire to rebuild the temple is no longer fringe. It is becoming mainstream among rabbis, scholars, and religious leaders. The vessels of the temple have already been recreated. The priestly garments have been woven. The Levitical line has been traced and trained. The red heifer, long required for purification rites, is being raised in preparation. This is not preparation for a ceremony. It is the heralding of a prophetic moment. At the same time, believers across the world are sensing the urgency. Gentiles are being stirred to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, to recognize the significance of the Temple Mount, to understand the role the temple will play in the unfolding of the end-time drama. There is a global spiritual awakening taking place, one that connects Scripture with the soil of Zion. Physically, the mountain itself bears witness. Archaeological discoveries are validating biblical accounts. Earthquakes and tremors under the Temple Mount are becoming more frequent. Surveys and ground scans reveal structures and foundations that match the ancient plans. Time seems to be bending toward fulfillment. The mount is being prepared not by human zeal alone, but by divine intent. The ancient blueprint of the Third Temple, is resurfacing at a critical juncture in world history. This is not merely a return to an old idea, nor a religious dream clung to by a few. It is a divine design re-emerging from the shadows of time at the precise moment when the world trembles on the edge of prophetic fulfillment. The blueprint, written not only in scrolls but in the DNA of Israel's identity, is awakening. It is rising out of obscurity as if called forth by the same voice that once thundered from Sinai. The pattern given to Moses, expanded through David, and realized in Solomon, is once again being brought into focus for the days ahead. It is appearing not just in architectural renderings or scholarly works, but in the very preparation of the people. The Temple Institute in Jerusalem has already recreated the sacred vessels, constructed the menorah, the table of showbread, and the altar of incense. The garments of the high priest, including the ephod and breastplate with 12 stones, have been meticulously crafted according to the biblical pattern. Trained priests, descendants of Aaron verified through genealogical and genetic tracing, are now learning how to serve once again in the house of the Lord. What once seemed like symbolism is becoming substance. This blueprint is not only being revived in Israel. Across the world, believers and scholars alike are being drawn to the vision of the temple. In seminaries, in prophetic gatherings, in underground churches, in nations both free and oppressed hearts are being stirred with urgency and alignment. God is placing the image of the temple back into the minds of his people. It is more than a building. It is a signpost, a time marker, a convergence point for heaven and earth. At this critical juncture in world history, where wars rage, economies crumble, and morality collapses, the reemergence of the temple blueprint reveals a divine narrative unfolding behind the chaos. The world sees instability, but heaven sees preparation. The temple is the place where covenant meets creation, where law meets grace, where judgment meets mercy. Its return signals the nearing of the end of the age and the return of the King. Even the enemies of Israel sense it. The tension on the Temple Mount grows, not merely from political or religious disagreement, but from spiritual agitation. Darkness trembles at what this blueprint represents. It is not just the restoration of ritual, but the restoration of purpose. It signals the approach of a moment when God will once again make his dwelling among men, not in shadow, but in glory. Mysteries tied to Ezekiel's vision and Messiah's return are converging at the gate. The prophet Ezekiel, exiled by the rivers of Babylon, saw what most men could never imagine: visions of glory, wheels within wheels, and the future house of the Lord. He witnessed the departure of the glory from the temple and the city, but also saw the promise of its return. In Ezekiel chapter 43, the prophet describes a moment where the glory of the God of Israel comes from the east. His voice is like the sound of many waters, and the earth shines with his glory. The glory enters through the eastern gate, the same gate that has been sealed shut for centuries. Ezekiel's vision was not poetry. It was prophetic architecture. He was given precise measurements of a future temple yet to be built, one that would not match the blueprint of Solomon or the structure of Herod. It would be something greater, something reserved for a future appointed time. The eastern gate in that vision is not simply a point of entry. It is the conduit of divine return. The convergence begins when one realizes that the gate Ezekiel saw is the very same gate that now stands sealed in Jerusalem today. The fact that it faces the Mount of Olives is no coincidence, for that is the very location from which the Messiah ascended into heaven. And it is from there that he shall return. The book of Acts declares that he will return in the same way he left visibly, and to the Mount of Olives. The prophets, the apostles, and the words of the Messiah himself are converging upon that location. The sealed gate and the mountain opposite it are not relics of the past. They are coordinates on the map of divine destiny. Each stone bears silent testimony to what is coming. The sealing of the gate was prophesied, but so was its opening. It was shut to await the entrance of the prince. It was closed because what is sacred must remain untouched until the appointed hour. And when that hour comes, it will not be opened by human hands. It will be opened by the one whose glory filled the temple, departed from it, and will return again. This convergence is not isolated. It is building. The preparations for the Third Temple, the increasing global focus on Jerusalem, the political and spiritual tensions surrounding the Mount. All of these are streams feeding into the river of prophecy that flows directly to the Eastern Gate. It is not random. It is orchestrated. The enemy knows it, and so he surrounds the gate with graves. He tries to defile what he cannot stop. But graves cannot hinder glory, and no wall can keep out the one whose voice shakes the mountains. The Islamic control of the Temple Mount is trembling under unseen pressure. For decades, the surface appeared still dominated by the Golden Dome, guarded by the Waqf and declared off limits to Jewish worshippers. It seemed immovable, untouchable, locked in the grip of political agreements and religious tension. Yet beneath that calm facade, cracks are forming, not in the stones, but in the spiritual atmosphere, not in public proclamations, but in unseen currents moving through heaven and history. The control that has long kept the Jewish people from worshiping on their holiest site is beginning to tremble, not by the force of armies, but by the weight of prophecy. It was never meant to remain in foreign hands. The Temple Mount, the place where Abraham offered Isaac, where the glory of the Lord once filled the sanctuary, where sacrifice met mercy and heaven touched earth. This place has never belonged to man, it belongs to God. Though kings have conquered it, though empires have built upon it, though it has been trampled and desecrated, it remains sacred ground. And God has not forgotten it. The Islamic control, established after centuries of war and conquest, was permitted but not permanent. For a time, God allowed it, but permission is not the same as ownership. The unseen pressure rising now is not geopolitical, though politics will respond. It is not social, though society will shift. It is spiritual. Heaven is stirring. The days of the nations are drawing to a close. The time of the restoration of Zion is near, and as that time approaches, every false claim, every counterfeit dominion, every opposing stronghold must be shaken. Already the signs are there, small but unmistakable: increased Jewish presence on the Mount, legal rulings from Israeli courts questioning the limits imposed by the status quo, quiet excavations and discoveries pointing to the original temple foundations, the return of ancient artifacts, reports of supernatural manifestations, tensions rising not just from the conflict of men, but from the clash of realms. The Mount is no longer sleeping. The pressure comes from above. It is the pressure of prophecy pressing against the present. It is the decree of heaven pressing against the grip of man. It is the voice of the Lord declaring that his house shall be a house of prayer for all nations. Not a platform of political control, not a relic of foreign faith, but a place consecrated to the Most High. The pressure builds silently, invisibly, unrelentingly. The structures of control begin to creak. The watchmen on the wall begin to see. The spiritual resistance begins to weaken. God is shaking the foundations. Nations, stones, and time itself are bearing witness to the unfolding of ancient prophecy. This is not the shaking of earthly instability alone. It is the trembling of the created order under the weight of divine appointment. When God begins to move, nothing remains untouched. Thrones tremble, economies unravel, systems collapse, and structures men thought were eternal begin to crack. What is visible reflects what is unseen. For behind every global crisis, political turmoil, or spiritual battle, there is a deeper reality. God is shaking the earth to awaken those who dwell upon it. The shaking begins with nations. The empires of men rise and fall like waves upon the sea. But in this hour, the pace of collapse has accelerated. Governments once strong now falter. Alliances once unshakable now dissolve. Leaders grope in darkness for solutions, but none hold. Conflict erupts in unexpected places. Borders are redrawn. Unrest boils beneath every continent. This is no accident. It is not merely the chaos of geopolitics. It is the fulfillment of prophecy. The book of Haggai declared that the Lord would shake all nations, and the desire of nations would come. We are witnessing that shaking now. The old world order is dissolving, and the foundations are being cleared for the arrival of the kingdom that shall not be moved. But the shaking does not end with nations. It reaches into the stones. In Jerusalem, the ground itself testifies. Stones that have lain buried for millennia are being uncovered. Foundations once hidden are being revealed. Archaeological evidence rises to the surface, not by chance, but by providence. The very rocks cry out, announcing the restoration of Zion. Each discovery confirms what the prophets declared, what the scriptures preserved, and what heaven ordained. Even the stones of the temple, mount the contested, sacred, and blood-stained threshold of God's dwelling, begin to bear witness. Cracks appear, tensions build beneath the surface, and the ancient gate begins to stir. Then, time itself begins to bear witness. We live in days that resemble those long foretold. The convergence of signs, wars and rumors of wars, lawlessness increasing, love growing cold, knowledge multiplying, Israel restored. All align with the prophecies spoken thousands of years ago. Time is not an endless cycle. It is a path with a destination, and that destination is now within sight. The events of today echo the scrolls of yesterday. What was spoken by Daniel, Isaiah, Ezekiel, and John is no longer distant. It is near. It is now. We have arrived at a moment unlike any other, a moment heavy with the weight of prophecy, trembling with the sound of footsteps that are not yet heard, but are ever drawing nearer. The eastern gate stands sealed, yet it is not silent. The stones speak, the earth stirs. The ancient prophecies written in fire and blood are no longer confined to scrolls or speculation. They are rising. The third temple is no longer a future dream, but a present stirring. The very location where the glory of God once dwelled is being prepared for his return. And everything is shifting because of it. This is not just a call to observe the signs. It is a summons to awaken. The gate is beginning to move. The forces that kept it shut, whether political, religious, or spiritual, are trembling. And with that trembling comes a divine warning, for what moves in Jerusalem shakes the nations. What happens on the Temple Mount resounds through the corridors of time. The shaking of foundations is not accidental. It is the hand of the Almighty preparing the world for the next chapter in his redemptive plan. The nations rage, the rulers conspire, but the one enthroned in heaven laughs, for his word cannot be broken. The convergence of prophecy is undeniable. Ezekiel's vision of the returning glory, the preparations for the third temple, the spiritual awakening among God's people, the trembling of the Islamic grip over the mount, and the movement beneath the sealed gate. All declare that the appointed time is near. We are no longer standing on the edge of prophecy. We are standing in the midst of it. Time itself bears witness. The signs of the end are not merely coming. They have arrived, and the gate, sealed by man, awaits the command of heaven. So, the question is not whether these things will happen, but whether we will be ready when they do. The shaking will intensify. What is not grounded in truth will fall. What is not built on the rock will crumble. But those who understand the times, those who align with heaven's purposes, those who watch and prepare, they will stand. They will shine like lights in the darkness. They will not be overcome. This is the hour to cast off distraction, to lay aside comfort, to wake from slumber. The King is drawing near. The gate is preparing to open. The temple will rise again, not as a relic of history, but as a stage for eternity. And the glory that once departed will return. Let every heart that seeks him be purified. Let every eye that longs for him be opened. Let every voice that knows the truth declare it. For the eastern gate is moving. The time is now. The King is coming. And the whole world will know that he alone is Lord.